Welcome back to College Football Addiction. I've got Drake C. Toll on with us, locked on Big 12. Appreciate BetUS. We'll give them a little love in a moment. Drake, the season is over. We have crowned a national champion after the first 12-team college football playoff. And the disrespect for the Big 12, for BYU specifically, we'll talk about them in a moment, continues on with our final AP rankings. And when will it ever stop, I guess is maybe the big question. But no love for the Big 12 here.
Yeah, the AP poll, the final AP poll, TJ, was frustrating, and frustrating in its inconsistency. I should also mention congratulations to Will Howard, Big 12 quarterback Will Howard, on that national championship that you mentioned a second ago. And man, for Arizona State to be 7, which they deserved before the college football playoff, and now they finally get their flowers, but then you look and BYU is behind SMU after blowing out Colorado, proving they should have been in the college football playoff conversation, and they still get a snub at 13, saying that, hey, if we were right all along, you still wouldn't have been in the college football playoff. And I think that we can put to bed that Boise State is a better team than BYU or even Arizona or Iowa State or Arizona State, and yet there the Broncos are still in the top 10 at number 8 overall, or that BYU is probably better than Indiana, and Indiana sits at 10, but the Cougars at 13. So for Iowa State, BYU, Arizona State, all three who performed really well in the postseason, I think the Big 12 needed more love in this final AP poll. I guess it's what do you, at what point do you start expecting this and stop getting upset when it happens and just accept it and roll over? That's what I'm sure Brett Yormark is asking himself right now is, will there ever be change? Will there ever be respect by and large for Big 12 schools in the preseason, in the postseason, in the midseason when it comes to the AP? We saw all year long, a lot of these voters don't even have enough credentials to be voters. We watched one guy after Notre Dame beat the doors off of Navy, rank Navy ahead of Notre Dame. I don't know. I wish there was a vetting process to look at the AP poll voters and say, hey, it is very illegal the week after something like that happens, Notre Dame and Navy, to put Navy above Notre Dame. But no, they can do whatever they want. They exercise that right. And once again, they're the ones who look like idiots. It's just fun message board material for college football teams and coaches to look at and go, wow, that's really, really stupid.
You asked the question of when do we stop getting upset and just expect this? I'm not there yet, right? Yeah. I feel like as a I don't know, freelancer. I don't know if that's the right word.
You play it down the middle. You're objective, right?
Yeah, like I don't really care. I've been to Big 12 games this year. I've been to ACC games. I've been to SEC games. I didn't go to the Big 10 this year, who ultimately won the whole thing. But I don't care. I truly don't. I watch all of it. I love all of it. I'm a passionate college football fan, but you asked, when do you stop? I haven't gotten there yet. And so maybe Yormark, a little less hair than I have, has pulled all of his out and isn't still frustrated about it. But you did mention something. It goes back to the preseason, and we're going to do the same thing next year. We automatically rank certain teams higher because of their talent profiles, because of whatever, right? The conference affiliation they have, whatever you want to say. And essentially every conference but the Big 10 had a bunch of teams go 10-2 this year. Like that's just what we ended up having in just about every conference, right? There was some variation with that slightly. Clemson gets in, but Miami went 10-2. So that's essentially what we had. And for some reason, 10-2 in one conference, just because of the way that rankings start out, 10-2 and a loss to a bad Auburn team or a loss to a bad Florida or Kentucky team, it just doesn't impact you because, hey, at one time that was a top 10 team. South Carolina has a top 10 win against A&M from this season, but we know that that's not real. We know that that's not really a top 10 team. So early season rankings, preseason rankings through the year, we really should re-rank everything and say, well, no, you had one top 10. You had one top 25 wins because by the time you ended up playing your entire schedule, everybody else you played ended up stinking. Like Georgia Tech has a top 10 win against my Seminoles this year. Does anybody really think that Georgia Tech beat a top 10? You know, the AP poll doesn't even vote after week 0. So guess who also has a top 10 win? Boston College. Does anybody really look at Georgia Tech and Boston College and say, oh, man, those top 10 wins they had to start the year off were impressive? No, you look at Florida State and say they were dog crap. And so the problem is with the final rankings. The bigger problem is with the preseason rankings and the fact that we use an arbitrary metric to then guide our thinking for the rest of the season. I will get right back to chatting with Drake, but first, do me a favor and give some love to our friends over at BetUS. We appreciate them for riding with us this year. make sure that you're betting with them. If you are betting on the NFL playoffs or any other sporting events, use our code YouTube150 for 150% deposit bonus on your first deposit, 125% on your next two, all of that up to $2,000. We appreciate BetUS for their support.
Well, a big piece of this is that arbitrary metric is based off of, in a large way, recruiting rankings. And if your rivals are ESPN or On3 and you're ranking these recruits, and some of this is pay to play kind of deal. And next thing you know, a win over top 10 Florida State in week 1 is even better because, wow, on paper, they are so good. And your strength of schedule is going to boost because they have 15 guys who were rated as a 96 overall coming out of high school on the ESPN grade. And so when strength of schedule is by and large determined, or FPI, by and large determined by the athleticism on a school's roster and the number next to their name, we should take that out until week 6, week 7, week 8. There's a reason we don't rank the college football playoff teams until later in the season, and that is because you want to see the full body of work in the college football year. And at that point, at week 8, hey, we've seen enough of your body of work to give you a number by your name that's a little bit more appropriate. That's one of the few things the College Football Playoff Committee gets right. Whereas in the AP poll situation, they can keep you out of the top 25 of the preseason, a la in Arizona State. And then at the end of the year, they can kind of do whatever they want with you because preseason, you weren't supposed to do this. Now you're the chippy underdog, and congratulations to you. I guess we could give you a little bit of a boost or a bonus. We'll put you at 7. Or BYU, who was supposed to finish 13th in the Big 12, and they end up far exceeding expectations, winning 11 games this season. And it's still... I know you went on the road and beat SMU, but we're going to keep you behind SMU. I know Ole Miss had some really crappy losses in SEC play. We're going to keep you behind Ole Miss. I know that Indiana has the same record and their strength of schedule is not as good, and we always value strength of schedule. But in this scenario, we're not going to value wins or strength of schedule. BYU, you have to sit behind Indiana. I just want to know, I wish, again, we didn't have these preseason rankings that we hinge so much of college football on. I want to know, can there be an objective way, a computer that takes everything into account here, not pay-to-play recruiting rankings, not your preseason ranking, not giving you a strength of schedule bump by beating an eventual 4-8 team who at the time was number 9 in the country. I want to know if there's an objective way to handle college football so that the Big 12 doesn't lose money. We lost a lot of money because BYU didn't get the same respect of a Boise State or an Indiana or anybody from the SEC that was sitting around the college football playoff rankings. And we lost money because Colorado lost its bowl game. They had to. They played a Big 12 team, So many aspects like that where the Big 12 seems to get the short end of the stick. And part of that are the AP voters and ultimately these polls that affect where our schools rank and where the money comes from.
Yeah, it's not like the Big 12 doesn't have talent, right? You win the Heisman, your former quarterback wins the national championship. Shedeur could be the number 1 or 2 pick overall. Scadaboo way up there in Heisman voting too.
TJ, Will Howard was never a full season starter at Kansas State. A backup 3 times running, and then Avery Johnson replaced him at Kansas State his final year there for a couple of games. That's the guy that led his team to the national championship.
And maybe the best part of this, the best, worst, however you want to look at it, is the team that BYU is slated right behind.
Yeah.
And don't talk to me about that win against SMU was early in the year because guess who's 2 behind SMU? Clemson, who beat them late in the year. So it is just a colossal failure of the way that we put this together. To not only, the early season win, they were different teams by the end of the year. They really weren't. They were different teams by the end of the year. Okay, SMU lost their last 2 games. BYU won their last couple. So, and then if you want to go with that argument, then why is Clemson not ahead of both of them, right? Mm-hmm. Why is Clemson, who beat them in the last time they played each other, why are they not ahead? So, yeah, I don't know. I got a lot to complain about and probably not done this offseason doing it. But on day 1 of the offseason, here we are complaining.
Yeah, no kidding. And I think we deserve to because now more people access to social media and I think 2 things. Access to social media gives everyone an opinion, and at this point, that's probably good. Public perception is going to lean the way of the little man, the Big 12. Right now, everyone's mad at ESPN and the SEC. No one's rooting for them, by and large, when you ask the public. That's a positive. And 2, our new era of college football, where ESPN owns the SEC, they're going to continue to drive that propaganda. You see it in the final AP poll. The final college football playoff poll will reflect the exact same thing. And until that changes, I will continue to complain because I know I'm right.
Drake, where can people hear you be right about other things than this and get more of your content?
Yeah, on Twitter at Drake C. Toll or at LO Big 12, wherever you find your podcast with Locked On Big 12.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate BetUS for their support. We'll talk to you guys soon here on College Football Addiction.